everyone, and welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into something that's probably on a lot of your minds, healthcare and retirement. And we're focusing specifically on you working at the post office with retirement, maybe on the horizon or maybe even closer than that.
That's right. We've got a ton of resources here to help you make sense of it all.
Yeah,
Medicare, Social Security, all those choices that can make your head spin.
exactly. And our goal, to equip you with the knowledge to make those decisions about your healthcare as you head into retirement, to make you feel confident about it.
It can definitely feel like a maze, especially for postal employees who also have to consider the Federal Employee Health Benefits Program, FEHB.
Right, FEHD. And then on top of that, you've got the new Postal Service Health Benefits Program, PSHB, that's launching in 2025, specifically for postal workers and retirees. We'll definitely dig into that a little bit more later on. But first, let's tackle the Medicare puzzle. I think one of the first big decisions you'll face is choosing between Medicare Advantage and Medigap. What's the difference there?
Well, the core difference boils down to this. Medicare Advantage plans often have networks of doctors, meaning you're limited in who you can see.
Hmm.
Medigap, on the other hand, lets you see any doctor who accepts original Medicare, so you've got more freedom there.
So with Medicare Advantage, maybe you get those extra perks like dental and vision, but you're tied to their network. Medigap gives you flexibility, but maybe higher premiums. It's really about what matters most to you.
Exactly. And speaking of costs, another big coin we're seeing in our research is whether Social Security benefits are taxable or not.
Right, because nobody wants a surprise tax bill in retirement. So what determines that? I know our sources talk about something called combined income. What is that? Like all your income combined?
Not quite. It's a little bit more specific than that. It's half of your Social Security benefits plus all your other income. So that includes things like wages from a part-time job if you have one, annuity payments, interest, dividends, even tax-exempt interest.
Okay. So let's say a married couple is bringing in $45,000 a year from Social Security alone. No other income, no taxes on those benefits, right?
That's right. But it's interesting how that can change. If that same couple also had, say, $30,000 from a part-time job, their combined income jumps up. And suddenly part of their Social Security becomes taxable. We actually have some examples in our sources from the IRS showing how these calculations work. It's fascinating.
Wow, it really seems like every little bit of extra income can have a big effect on your taxes. All right, shifting gears a bit. I know you're 68 and planning to retire in May. You're currently on the Mail Handlers Benefit Plan, MHBP, through Aetna. And one of your questions is whether you can switch to a different plan right away or if you have to wait for open season in November.
That's a good question. And retiring might actually be what they call a qualifying event.
Yeah.
So it might let you change plans outside of open season. But honestly, the best thing to do is contact MHBP and OPM directly to confirm.
Right, go straight to the source. Now, once you're enrolled in Medicare Part B, you have more choices. You can choose a Medicare Advantage plan from any company. You're not just stuck with the ones offered through FEHB. But then you've got this other big decision. Do you stick with FEHB or go with the standalone Medicare Advantage plan?
That's a tough one. FEHB often works really well with Medicare. You have comprehensive benefits. It can feel very secure because you're already familiar with it.
I can see how the cost would be a factor, though. Some of those standalone Medicare Advantage plans have really tempting prices.
They do. But you got to be careful about those networks we talked about. And sometimes those extra perks come with limitations.
So it's not always as simple as lower price equals better deal. You really have to weigh the pros and cons there. Which brings us to another question. Right now, both you and the post office, contribute to your health insurance. How does that change in retirement?
So you will be responsible for the Medicare Part B premium, which is $185 a month in 2025.
Yeah.
But remember, that can change every year. And if you stick with FEHB, even if it's a Medicare Advantage plan offered through FEHB, you'll still have to pay those FEHB premiums on top of that Part B premium.
Wait, so if you choose a Medicare Advantage plan through FEHB, aren't those premiums covered by FEHB already? I'm a little confused about how all these premiums fit together.
Yeah, it is a little confusing, a lot of moving parts here. But it's important to remember that FEHB is still your primary insurance, even if you choose a Medicare Advantage plan through them. So you're still paying the FEHB premiums. Essentially, FEHB premiums are separate from Medicare Part B premiums, even if you choose a Medicare Advantage plan within FEHB.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. So you'd be paying both the Medicare Part B premium and the FEHB premium. Got it. And then what about those annuity payments? Do those factor into this whole premium payment puzzle somehow?
Yes, they do. The premiums can usually be deducted directly from your annuity payments. It makes things a bit easier. That's good to know. Okay, another question we got. Is Medicare Part B mandatory? Do you absolutely have to sign up for it when you retire from the post office?
You need Part B to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan, but you can actually rely solely on FEHB for your coverage if you choose.
So there's some flexibility there, but I imagine there are trade-offs, right? Like, does Medicare Part B cover some things that FEHB doesn't,
Yeah,
or vice versa?
you got it. You have to weigh those potential coverage gaps and the overall costs. Plus, your health needs can change over time, right? So what works for you now might not be the best fit down the road.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to be a fortune teller predicting your future health needs.
In a way, yes. It's about making informed decisions based on your situation and what you think might happen in the future. And don't forget, if you delay enrolling in Part B and don't have what they call credible coverage, you could face penalties.
Credible coverage, what does that mean? Basically, it means having health insurance that meets Medicare standards. And good news is FEHB is generally considered credible coverage. So as long as you keep that FEHB coverage, you can delay Part B and not worry about penalties.
Okay, so no penalty panic for our listener? Phew.
Yeah.
What about actually applying for Part B when the time comes? Is that a whole other maze to navigate?
It's actually pretty straightforward. The easiest way is to apply online at ssa.gov. That's the Social Security Administration website. You can also apply by phone or in person, but it usually takes a bit longer.
Good to know. So, no need to involve insurance companies or agents in this process. It's all direct through Social Security.
That's right. Now, before we jump into some real-life cost comparisons, I want to go back to something we briefly talked about earlier, that new Postal Service Health Benefits Program, PSHB, that's coming in 2025. Big change for postal workers and retirees.
Yeah, can we unpack that a little bit more? What exactly is PSHB and how is it different from FEHB? I know it's going to be similar to FEHB, but what are the key things our listener needs to know?
So PSHB is a separate program designed just for postal employees and retirees. It will be administered by the Postal Service itself, not OPM. And while it will share a lot of similarities with FEHB, the specifics of plan offerings, premiums, and benefits could be different.
So, even though it's modeled after FEHB, it's not exactly the same thing. There could be some important differences that our listener needs to be aware of.
Absolutely. It's crucial to stay informed about the specifics of PSHB as we get closer to 2025. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on things and provide updates as they become available.
Perfect, because we want to make sure our listener has all the information they need to make the best choices for their retirement health care. Speaking of which, let's get into some real life cost comparisons. We'll explore different scenarios, see how the numbers actually play out, and help you make sense of what each option means for your budget. Ready to crunch some numbers?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture: Medicare, Social Security, FEHB, and even that new PSHB coming in 2025. But now I think it's time to get into the details a bit and actually look at some real world examples, especially when it comes to costs, like comparing those FEHB plans and the standalone Medicare Advantage plans.
Yeah, I think looking at the numbers can really help. So let's start with a hypothetical situation. You've decided to enroll in Medicare Part B when you retire. So there's that $185 monthly premium. And let's say you're considering a Medicare Advantage plan offered through FEHB. Let's say one from Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Okay, so Medicare Part B is covered, and you're thinking about a Medicare Advantage plan through FEHB. So does that mean you only have to pay that Medicare Part B premium, or do those FEHB premiums still come into play?
That's where it gets a little tricky. Even if you choose a Medicare Advantage plan through FEHB, you still have those FEHB premiums. They don't go away just because you're on Medicare Advantage plan.
Oh, I see. So it's not like those Medicare Advantage plans are free even if you get them through FEHB. You're essentially paying for both.
Exactly. You're paying for that FEHB coverage overall, and then the Medicare Part B is on top of that because it's required for any Medicare Advantage plan.
Okay, that makes sense. So in this scenario, you're paying both the Medicare Part B premium and the FEHB premium, even with the Medicare Advantage plan. Now, what about those annuity payments? Do they like magically cover all the premiums?
Not magically, but they do help. The premiums are usually taken directly out of your annuity payments every month. It's pretty convenient.
So it's not like the Postal Service sends a separate check to the insurance company or anything. The money comes right out of your annuity. That is convenient, but it also means those premiums are coming out of your retirement income each month.
You got it. And that's why it's so important to really look at your budget and understand how much each option is going to cost you overall.
For sure. Okay, we've talked about sticking with FEHB and maybe choosing a Medicare Advantage plan through them. What about those standalone Medicare Advantage plans? How do their costs usually compare?
Standalone Medicare Advantage plans can have really low premiums. Some even have $0 premiums per month. And they often include extra benefits like dental, vision, and even hearing, which can sound like a really good deal.
I bet, especially when you compare that to paying FEHB premiums on top of the Medicare Part B premium. Sounds like you could save a lot of money.
You could, but, and this is important, you have to be careful about those networks we talked about earlier. With a standalone Medicare Advantage plan, you're usually limited to doctors and hospitals that are in their network.
Right, and if you go out of network, it could get really expensive.
Exactly. So even though that low monthly premium might sound great, you got to think about those potential costs if you need to see a specialist or go to a hospital that's not in the plan's network.
It's a trade-off.
Well,
Lower monthly payments, but maybe less flexibility and the chance of higher costs down the line if you need care outside of the network.
exactly. And you never know what your health needs are going to be in the future.
Yeah. So true. What might seem like a good deal now could end up costing you more later on if your health changes.
Right. And that's why it's so important to weigh the pros and cons of every option carefully. Think about your health now, any family history of health issues, and what you might need in the future.
It's a lot to think about. And this is all before we even consider that PSHB program coming in 2025. We'll definitely have to keep an eye on how that changes things.
Definitely. For now, let's switch gears a little bit and look at another question our listener had. Do you have enroll in Medicare Part B when you retire from the post office? Or can you just use FEHB?
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting question. Can you walk us through how to think about that? What are some things our listeners should consider when deciding?
That's a good question. And the answer, like with most things about retirement healthcare, is it depends. You don't technically have DE2 in Part B if you have FEHB. FEHB counts as what they call credible coverage, which basically means it meets Medicare's requirements.
So you could just stick with FEHB and not worry about Part B at all. But I'm guessing there are some things to consider, like are there benefits to having both or downsides to not having Part B?
Absolutely. It's not a simple yes or no answer. There are definitely pros and cons on both sides.
Okay, so let's go through them. What are some of the advantages of having both FEHB and Medicare Part B?
Well, one big plus is having more comprehensive coverage. FEHB is pretty comprehensive, but there might be some things that Medicare Part B covers that FEHB doesn't, or the other way around. Having both gives you kind of a safety net.
Okay, so you're covered from more angles, but are there downsides to having both? Wouldn't that mean paying more?
Yes, it would be more expensive because you're paying for two different plans, so you have to decide if that extra coverage is worth the extra cost. It depends on your situation and your risk tolerance.
Okay, so that's if you have both FEHB and Medicare Part B. What about if you decide to just go with FEHB and not enroll in Part B? What are the pros and cons of that?
The biggest pro is saving money. You wouldn't have to pay that extra $185 a month for Part B.
Makes sense. But I'm guessing there are some risks too.
There are. You could run into situations where FEHB doesn't cover something that Part B would have covered, so you're taking a bit of a gamble.
Right. Saving money, but taking on more risk.
Exactly. And it's really important to remember that your health can change as you get older. What works for you now might not be the best choice a few years down the road. If you suddenly need more care and you don't have Part B, you might regret that decision.
That's a good point. You can't predict the future, but you can make smart choices based on what you know now and what you think might happen later.
I agree. And that's why it's so important to do your research, understand all the options, and maybe even talk to a financial advisor who specializes in retirement planning.
Speaking of potential risks, let's talk about something that we've noticed a lot of people worry about. Those penalties for enrolling late in Medicare Part B. How do those work, and does our listener need to worry about them?
It's a common worry. But for someone like our listener who has FEHB, it's not a huge concern. As long as they keep their FEHB coverage, they can wait to enroll in Part B and won't be penalized.
Okay. So FEHB kind of acts as a protection against those penalties. That's good news. But what about when the time does come to apply for Part B? Is that a complicated process?
Not really. It's actually pretty simple. The easiest way is to do it online at ssa.gov. That's the website for the Social Security Administration. You can also do it by phone or in person, but those ways usually take longer.
That's good to know. It's not something to stress over. And you don't even have to involve insurance companies or agents. It's all done through Social Security.
Exactly. One less thing to worry about.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. We've talked about Medicare Advantage versus Medigap, all the details of FEHB, whether or not to enroll in Part B. and even how all those premiums work. My head is spinning. But there's one last piece of the puzzle we haven't talked about yet. Taxes.
Ah, yes. Taxes. The word that everyone loves to hear. But it doesn't have to be scary. We're going to break it down and help you understand how Social Security benefits and other retirement income can impact how much you pay in taxes. Get ready for some number crunching.
Okay, deep divers, it's the final stretch. Tax time. I know it can be a little scary, but we're going to demystify this whole thing, especially when it comes to retirement benefits and how they affect your tax bill. We've done Medicare, FEHB, even that new PSHB. Now it's time to figure out those taxes.
You're right, taxes are a big part of retirement planning, especially if you have income from a few sources, like Social Security, maybe an annuity, or even if you pick up a part-time job.
Yeah, for someone like you already getting Social Security and thinking about retiring soon, it's really important to understand how all these income sources can affect your taxes. We don't want any surprises at tax time.
Let's go back to that idea of combined income we talked about earlier. That's a key piece when
Mm.
figuring out if your Social Security benefits are taxable. Remember, it's half of your Social Security benefits plus all your other income, your pension, any wages, interest, dividends, basically everything.
So it's not just your total income, it's a specific calculation that decides whether you have to pay taxes on some of your Social Security.
Right. Let's say you're getting $45,000 per year from Social Security, and then you also have $20,000 coming in every year from your annuity. So your combined income would be $42,500.
And if I remember correctly, the threshold for married couples who are filing their taxes together is $32,000. So that means in this case, some of your Social Security benefits would be taxable.
Exactly. And don't forget, those annuity payments are usually taxable too.
Here.
But it's important to remember that the IRS has specific formulas for this. It can get kind of complicated.
It sounds like it can get pretty complex with all these income sources and different formulas.
Yeah, it can. And that's why it's a good idea to talk to a tax professional, especially as you're getting ready for retirement. They can help you figure out all the details and make sure you're not paying more taxes than you need to.
It's like having someone guide you through all the tax stuff. Sounds worth it to have an expert in your corner.
Totally. Can save you a lot of stress and maybe even some money in the long run.
I have to say, this deep dive has been so helpful. We've talked about so much.
Hmm?
Medicare, those FEHB plans, the new PSHB program, and all the tax stuff. It's a lot to take in. But I really hope this gives you the tools to start making those important decisions about your healthcare and retirement.
I hope so too. And remember, this is just the start. Don't be afraid to contact MHBP, OPM, even Medicare directly. They can give you personalized advice for your situation.
Absolutely. Be proactive. You've earned these benefits. Now make them work for you.
Well said. The more you know, the better decisions you can make. So keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep planning for your retirement.
And remember, we're always here to help you explore all the ins and outs of retirement. See you next time. Until then, best of luck with your retirement planning.